I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. The night of the family dinner settled over our house like a dark shroud, thick with unspoken anticipation. As I surveyed the familiar dining room, the mismatched chairs worn from years of family gatherings, the haunting scent of garlic and rosemary simmering from the kitchen, and the flickering candlelight that cast soft shadows against the walls, I could feel the tension in the air. It was palpable, suffocating, weaving its way through my insides, intertwining with my resolve. This was the moment I had meticulously prepared for, like an anxious soldier awaiting the battle call. At 25, I had finally gathered a sense of clarity, an urgency fueled by frustration and defiance, a need to shatter the silence that my father had insisted upon for far too long. The dinner table was adorned as if it were a celebration, a brightly colored tablecloth draping the surface, a centerpiece of fresh flowers resting from their own quiet beauty, all carefully arranged distractions from the impending storm that lay heavy in the atmosphere. I scanned the room, taking in my family, my mother arranging the silverware with hesitant hands, my younger brother absorbed in a game on his phone, and my Aunt Linda bustling around the kitchen, her energy vibrant and electric. The juxtaposition of the cheerful Dacre against the brewing storm in my heart made it hard to breathe. I forced a smile, even though I felt the weight of the conversation that was about to unfold looming over me, threatening to suffocate my courage. With every passing second, the clock seemed to tick louder, a reminder of how close we were to exposure. I knew that once we spoke our truths, there would be no turning back. I took a deep breath, letting the aroma of the food fill my nostrils. "How do you want to start?" I murmured to my aunt as we exchanged glances. Her eyes glimmered with determination, mirroring my thoughts. "I think it should start with your mom. She has the most to say," she replied, her voice low urgent. As the dining room filled, I remained silently focused, trying to maintain an air of normalcy. We gathered around the table, the radiant glow of the candles illuminating everyone's features. The way my mother's smile appeared strained, the glint of humor missing in my brother's eyes. My father, however, held his usual commanding presence at the head of the table, his posture upright, exuding an air of authority that unnerved me. "Let's eat," he declared, cutting through the hesitant chatter. I glanced around at the others. Everyone seemed to stiffen, the energy in the room shifting from pleasant to tense. Once the food was served, heaping mounds of mashed potatoes, succulent roast chicken with herbs, and bright green beans steaming with freshness, the conversation began to flow more easily. My father engaged everyone, rattling off questions about work and school, but my thoughts were already racing ahead, imagining how the confrontation would unfold. "Everyone looks great. What have you been up to, Amelia?" My father's belated interest in my life hit me like icy water. For years, I had waited for him to notice me, but now it felt like a bear trap trying to lure in its prey. "Just working on a few personal projects," I replied, my voice wavering as I fought to hold his gaze. I could see his eyebrows raise, the familiar expression that conveyed disinterest and dismissal, like I was a child sharing her imaginary friends. He shrugged, and I could feel his impatience hanging in the air like a fog. "That's nice, dear," he said, turning away to converse with my brother. I exchanged quick glances with my mother and aunt, silently urging them to gather the courage to speak to start this unveiling. The chatter at the table rolled on, but it felt muted to me, like I was submerged in water, listening in from a distance. My heart raced at the thought of the moment looming just ahead, the emotional truth that wanted to claw its way to the surface. And then, without thinking, I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor, eliciting a few startled glances. "Can we talk about something?" My voice cut through the noise like a knife. My heart thudded wildly in my chest. I could see my father's sharp glare fix on me as my aunt's expressive eyes held a spark of encouragement, a gentle push toward what we all knew had to be said. "It's time we speak the truth about our family." "What truth?" my father retorted, his tone laced with disbelief. "What nonsense is this?" "No nonsense, Dad." My voice rang out stronger than I anticipated, and for a moment I was surprised at my own defiance. "How long are we going to pretend everything is normal? How long will we allow your oppressive shadow to silence our dreams?" A heavy silence blanketed the room, and I could hear the soft echo of my heartbeat in my ears. My mother's eyes widened, and she glanced between my father and me. I could feel the tension coiling tighter around us as I prepared to unleash the floodgates that had been sealed for far too long. "We all have things to say," I declared, meeting my father's gaze directly, searching for signs of reaction. My aunt spoke up first, seizing the moment. "I have had enough of your arrogance and your cruelty," she declared, her voice unwavering. "We've all been walking on eggshells for years. It is time we put an end to this." "You are out of line, Linda," my father barked, his voice booming, but there was a crack in his facade, a hint that our words might be piercing through his armor. "You have no right to speak to me that way in my own home. It's time we reclaim our voices," my mother finally whispered, her tone trembling yet fierce. "I have buried my life in silence for too long, providing for our family despite your relentless disapproval and indifference." Her hands were shaking as she finally unleashed the storm that had been building inside her. The simmering anger in her voice rose and filled the space, pushing past the specter of my father. "Speak to me like that? I've worked hard for this family," he bellowed, his anger manifesting in clenched fists and a furrowed brow. I felt my heart lurch at the depth of my mother's struggle, the adversity she had faced, and I could sense the support rippling around the table as my brother put down his phone, suddenly aware of the battle that had erupted. "We've all sacrificed so much," my brother added, leaning forward with a newfound intensity. "It was always about your dreams, Dad, but what about us, what we wanted? You crushed every aspiration I shared with you. I wanted to be an artist, and you laughed at me." Do you remember that? At that moment, I saw not just my brother's pain, but the weight of everyone's unspoken burdens piling up like bricks laid against a wall, ready to topple over. My heart swelled with a mix of gratitude and anxiety, each voice rowing steadily against the tide of our father's stubbornness. You've raised us under your thumb, my aunt continued, her voice unwavering, trying to pull the group forward. It's time we show the world who we really are. You like to flaunt our successes like some twisted trophy? Well, we are not trophies, we are human beings. The truth spilled from my mother as she continued, softer but undeniable. I sacrificed my dreams for yours. I have spent years living in the shadows of your grand vision, and now it is our time to find out who we really are. The room was alive now, every heartbeat in sync with the urgency of our mission. I felt a small flicker of hope stirring within me, encouraging the others to voice their pain, to expose the ugly truths behind the glossy veneer our family had presented for far too long. I could see the defiance emerge in my mother's eyes, a dull strength that had been yearning to come alive. Your reign of fear ends here, I finally declared, the fire in my chest ignited. We are not afraid any longer, we will speak our truths, we will reclaim our identities. My father's face darkened, and I could almost see the gears turning in his mind, the shock at being confronted by his own blood. The power of our united voices rang loudly, drowning out his anger. There was no escaping it now. We had pulled back the curtain on the facade he had created, revealing the cracks and scars he had hoped would remain hidden. This is family, you are ruining everything, he thundered, but amidst his anger we stood strong. The air crackled with intensity, swirling with both fear and exhilaration. It was uncharted territory, but together we had taken the first step into freedom. This was the beginning, a rebellion against the oppression that had lingered like a dark cloud over our heads for too long. And as I looked around at the faces I loved, each one etched with determination, my courage swelled. We would not be silenced, we would fight together. In that moment, I knew our revenge would not just be about exposing our father, but about reclaiming our own lives and dreams from the dark prison he had constructed around us. As the dinner continued, the clinking of forks and knives against plates dimmed into a strange silence, as if the air around us had thickened, saturating our voices with the weight of unspoken truths. I could feel my heart pounding like a relentless drum in my chest, slowly at first, then quickening like a rising tide. The moment had finally arrived when I could no longer allow my father to silence me. A whirl of emotions twirled within me, a cocktail of fear, anger, and finally determination. Taking a deep breath, I momentarily locked eyes with my mother, who sat across the table, her gaze flickering with uncertainty, the kind of fear that has been nurtured over years of being overshadowed. I nodded reassuringly, willing her to understand that together we could confront the storm in the heart of our home. Stephen, she began, her voice threading through the silence like a fragile line, trembling yet with each word, I sensed it gain strength, growing steadier and echoing in the hollows of the dining room. I have spent years sacrificing my dreams, living under your shadow, to ensure our family stayed together. I lost sight of my own happiness. Her eyes searched the room, taking in the teetering snow globe of memories filled with laughter and tears we had all shared. Each word cut through the atmosphere like a sharp knife, and I could see my father's brow furrow with confusion, his mouth tightening into a thin line of disbelief. Then my Aunt Linda chimed in next, her voice burning like a fire ignited by embers long hidden. I have felt the weight of your disrespect too, Stephen. It is about time we all start speaking up. The raw fervor behind her words surged through me, igniting a crackling energy that reverberated off the walls. It felt like a rallying cry that had erupted among the paintings on the walls, the faces of our ancestors watching us, finally unveiling years' worth of bottled-up emotions that yearned to be freed. I could feel my father's expression changing with each revelation, morphing from shock to a palpable fury that darkened his features, hands clenching into fists that looked ready to burst with anger. How dare you all betray me like this? He roared, a storm brewing in his eyes, a tempest that threatened to consume all within its reach. The room buzzed with tension, palpable electricity building between us, every nerve ending tingling in anticipation of conflict. I felt a spark of unease erupting in the pit of my stomach. In that moment, I could rationalize my emotions as the flickering flame of doubt, but this was my moment and I was not going to back down. We are not betraying you, I proclaimed, feeling a surge of power wash over me, warming my cheeks even as dread seeped into the corners of my mind. We are done hiding, this ends here. Each voice added a layer of strength to the truth, a harmonious cacophony that formed an unyielding wall against my father's storm of rage. The tension felt like a bowstring pulled taut, vibrating in the electric air. That was the catalyst. One final admission, fueled by a well of emotion that boiled over within me. Your reign of fear has made us prisoners in our own home, and we refuse to live like this any longer. My voice carved through the resentment-filled air like a lighthouse beam slicing through fog, declaring our newfound resolve. His body tightened even further with anger, the veins in his neck bulging like taut ropes. I could almost hear the cracks of chains breaking, the sound echoing off every wall, radiating the release of years of tensions that had flooded our home like a rising tide. My mother's hands trembled, the skeletal remains of an abandoned dream curling around her, yet here she was, standing tall beside me, and for the first time I could see not just anger in her eyes but also the flicker of something magical, hope. Amelia, my father spat, his voice rising in pitch, betraying the effort he made to maintain authority. You have no idea what you're saying, you will regret this moment. I have given everything to this family. Everything. My mother retorted, her voice cracking but fierce. When did it become your everything while we had nothing? Do you even know what it feels like to be in the shadows of your own home? I have watched you prioritize your job over our happiness for years. You clench the reins of control until we suffocate beneath it. The words hung in the air like the fading notes of a dirge, but the energy around us transformed, vibrating with a newfound strength. I glanced at my Aunt Linda, her face alight with fierce determination, giving me the courage I needed. It is not just Amelia and I, Stephen. We are done standing idle. Your berating has worn us thin, your disdain has caught us like thorns, she added sharply, her voice uncovering years of painful memories that clung to the fabric of our family life like cobwebs. I can't believe this. I won't stand for insubordination in my own home. He thundered, his fist slamming down hard onto the dining table, rattling our glassware with alarming violence. Who do you think you are? A bunch of delusional weaklings? I am your father. One day you will all— Will what? I cut in, feeling urgency rush in like a tide. Will we conform to your will forever, live in silence, never uttering our own truths? We all feel your ire, the way it rolls off you like a wave of ice. We only want to breathe freely. At that moment, I could see the shock and anger battling it out on his face, like thunderheads colliding in the sky. The fear that had once gripped me, that familiar bind of anxiety, began to loosen its hold as I found my voice not just to express dissent, but to finally redefine who I was. You can't silence us, nor can you stifle our desires and dreams, I said firmly, every word resonating. The flame in me burned brightly, and I felt the air shift again, the current of a storm brewing above. We will not be your puppets, dancing to your tune while shackled by your rules. The dining room felt transformed into a battlefield, emotions soaring high and wild as my family rallied together, each voice added to our collective strength, gathering momentum like a tidal wave prepared to crash down where the shore met the sea. It has been too long, too much spent feeling less than what we are. My mother continued passionately, channels of tears flowing unabashed down her cheeks, each one signaling another chain released, another truth unleashed. I sacrificed my health to build this family only to watch you strip it down and forget my existence, she lamented, her voice becoming steadier with the power that built between us. How many silences have I endured in the name of family, and what did that get us? A web of shattered dreams woven from fear. At that moment, with the chaos swirling around us, I could hear the echoes of voices long buried under years of authoritarian silence rising again, clashing with their oppressor. Enough is enough, my aunt shouted, her voice a rallying battle cry. We choose to rise above this fear. Every word struck like lightning against the backdrop of the oppressive silence that had once suffocated our household. I felt a swell of unity, a climactic crescendo that swirled through every body present, hearts pounding, voices climactic, painting an image of liberation that danced through the air. In that intimate battleground of words, something deep shifted within me. I felt vulnerable yet powerful, exposed yet fortified. When my father's familiar rage morphed into bewilderment, confusion gripped his expression. You all think this matters. He stuttered, momentarily stunned, his facade cracking like porcelain under pressure. The transition in him was palpable. This matters more than you know, my mother replied softly, revealing a sincerity that felt like rays of sunlight breaking through thunderclouds. This matters because we are tired of being your audience, reduced to mere spectators of our own lives, while you claim dominion over the very essence of our family. I could see my father's posture slightly ease, the rigid angles softening as the room filled with the raw tensions of our unspoken emotions, fear, betrayal, hope. It seemed like the earth itself had shifted beneath us, allowing space for a new balancing to come forth. You can rage, I insisted, feeling the bond between us tight, but we will stand together, we will not back down. We might have started as prisoners, but with every truth unveiled, our chains whittle away. This is our home too, and our voices matter just as much as yours. As I spoke those words, I couldn't shake the feeling that sparks of change were dancing in the air, tiny embers of our collective truth igniting the very atmosphere. In the rhythm of chaos, a new potential unfolded before us as cracks ran through the tense silence, a new chapter waiting to be written, a story of resilience and unity taking the stage. In that defining moment, fear was stripped bare and replaced by an anger that transformed into power. For the first time, we stood united, ready to fight against the storm together. The uneasy silence had turned into something stronger, an undeniable vibe of solidarity echoing through the walls of our home. With our fortified voices ringing out against years of unyielding fear, I felt a step into a new dawn where shadows of the past would finally begin to lift. Together we took our stand, and together we would navigate the path of our rebirth into freedom, no longer defined by the clenched fists of dominance. The living room, once an arena of strained confrontations, now resonated with a heavy silence only broken by the rustling of leaves outside. Each tick of the clock was exaggerated, the rhythmic sound haunting as it mirrored the heartbeat of change coursing through me and my family. I stood there, the weight of the moment like a thick fog settled in my chest, and for the first time it wasn't fear pinching at my heart but exhilaration. I had done it. After years trapped in a suffocating hold of silence and deceit, I had spoken my truth. I had shattered the facade my father so carefully constructed, a facade I was all too familiar with, yet pried apart in an act of rebellion that felt long overdue. My father remained aghast, trapped in a moment where he could neither lash out nor plead his case. His mouth opened, but no words emerged, like his voice was robbed by the whirlwind of my revelation. The sunlight streamed through the window, scattering across the floorboards like fresh promises, illuminating the jagged landscape of shattered authority, a metaphor that felt oddly poetic. It felt almost unreal, like I was floating in a dream infused with possibilities and an inkling of fear about what would come next. Was I ready for this? I clenched my fists, determining that I had to be. Do you have anything to say? I asked, my voice steady, yet I felt the tendrils of vulnerability wrapping around me. The air crackled with tension, an electric buzz as I dared to hold his gaze, the authority figure brought to his knees not by another but by the very fabric of his own past misdeeds. He finally turned, his eyes darting away, unable to meet my defiant stare. I save it, I interrupted, my voice gaining strength like a crescendo building toward a grand finale. For once, you need to listen instead of trying to control. In that room, the atmosphere shifted, igniting something deep within each family member. It became evident that the chains binding us were finally breaking. No longer was I the only one caught in the painful web of our family dynamic, a struggle for control that had suffocated each of us in different ways. Days bled into each other, stretching endlessly as I prepared to leave. Every box I packed felt like a layer of burden shedding off my soul instead of just packing up my things. I tossed clothes into one box, each item a weight lifted, memories long held hostage beginning to dangle free. As I carefully folded items of my past, there was a bittersweet satisfaction attached. I began to feel lighter, as though I was peeling away parts of my identity shaped by fear. The soft fabric of my childhood blankets, the worn-out books that had been my escape, the very objects that used to anchor me in that chaotic life now felt like remembrances of resilience. I paused, holding one of my favorite books, the cover fraying, the edges worn out from countless readings, and smiled wistfully. Outside, I could hear the chirping of birds signaling the arrival of spring, a sound that hinted at fresh beginnings, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had once engulfed our home. I caught myself glancing back into the house each time I passed through the door, as if I could absorb every ounce of our shared history, carving it into my mind as a final snapshot before stepping away for good. It was comforting to know that I was leaving that tightly woven pattern of hurt behind. As I stood at the threshold, a heavy heart twisted with uncertainty weighed on my shoulders. My mother approached. Tears glistened in her eyes, luminous like tiny stars caught in the dark night. I reached for her hands, feeling the steady warmth emanating from her grasp. Amelia, we may have carried on like everything was fine, she said, her voice a trembling whisper filled with sincerity, but you were always the heart of this family. Her words poured over me like honey, softening the jagged edges of my departure. I felt gratitude wash over me, her acknowledgement acting like a balm for wounds long festering. There was strength in her message, a silent pledge to embrace whatever awaited us beyond this moment. I never realized just how strong you were until now, she continued, her emotions spilling forth like an overflowing river. You have given me strength I did not know I had. Her grip tightened as she pulled me into an embrace, a tethering of souls that held the promise of an uncertain, better tomorrow. I took a breath, feeling the warmth of hope unfurling within me. This is just the beginning for all of us, Mom. The conviction in my voice startled even me. I knew this was not about revenge anymore. It was an act of liberation for a family shackled to silence. After I left, I swam through the waters of newfound freedom. I embraced my life, fully determined to carve my own path, but still I found myself checking the rearview mirror every now and then, wanting to catch a glimpse of the change unfolding behind me. Months passed, stretching like an ambitious canvas, each day painted with strokes of courage and determination to seize every moment. Then came the day when my phone lit up with a call from a familiar number, my mother's name glowing on the screen. Part of me braced for a wave of emotions, but another part held a glimmer of hope. I answered, my heart drumming a lively tune. Hello, I said, my voice soft, anticipating the warmth that always radiated from her. Amelia, her voice came through, softer than I remembered, yet imbued with an undercurrent of strength. I wanted to tell you that we are finding our way, the family has changed, and so have I. Each word she spoke felt like a pebble thrown into a pond, sending ripples of relief cascading through me. I could almost picture the setting she was in. I imagined her seated at the old kitchen table where scars marred the wood, a sacred place where conversations often turned sour. Yet there she was, reclaiming that space, transforming it into something new every day. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Your father is going to counseling. He is learning to listen instead of just being a voice that tries to control everything, she said, her words dancing like the flickering light of a candle. He is transforming his beliefs about strength, Amelia, the kind of strength that doesn't depend on domination. A lump rose in my throat, and before I could stop myself, a laugh escaped. Seriously? I couldn't tamper down the joy bubbling up inside. It was a sound of disbelief mixed with elation. I felt tears stinging my eyes. Yes, she confirmed, her voice steady now. It has been slow, but he is trying, and I see glimpses of the man I fell in love with. He is not who I thought he was becoming. I closed my eyes, picturing this transformation, wondering what this new version of him meant for our family. The tangled web of emotions began to simmer. And you, how are you doing? Finding my voice, Amelia, she said, and I could hear the pride swell in her tone like the rising sun casting a brilliant glow over the horizon. I've joined a support group. There are women just like me who have lived through similar struggles. We share and uplift each other. I beamed at the phone, feeling the warmth radiating from her words. Mom, that's amazing. I can't believe you are taking such huge steps. It feels like I'm finally living, not just surviving. I could hear her smiling through the phone, her joy igniting something within me. Your bravery has made me braver, too. In that moment, I felt my heart bloom with hope that surged beyond the barriers of pain and wounds that seemed unhealable. The seeds of vengeance I once thought I was planting had blossomed into something beautiful. Not only had I created change in my life, but I had opened paths for healing and liberation for everyone connected to me. Life had a way of surprising us like that, turning the dark memories into the rich soil from which strength could grow, and somewhere amidst it all, in the quiet aftermath of that explosive truth, I found that revenge could sometimes unfurl itself into a wider horizon. A reminder that letting go could carve paths not just for me, but for those I loved as well. I felt my breath steady as I realized I was no longer driven by the desire for vengeance, but a passion for resurgence. A journey for us all time is a curious thing. It moves swiftly like the rush of wind through the trees, yet here I sit anchored in the moment, reflecting on my journey. My heart is filled to the brim with hope, a feeling I dare say I had almost forgotten this past year. So much has transpired that I hardly recognize the girl I used to be. I was once molded by the expectations of others, confined within walls that felt impossibly high. I thought freedom would be my undoing, yet it is precisely this independence that allowed me to carve a path of my own. I have become more than just Amelia Carter. I have transformed into a woman strong and resolute, paving my own future. The gentle sound of rain patters against the window as I sit cross-legged on my couch, a blanket draped over my legs for comfort. I sip a cup of chamomile tea, the earthy aroma curling around me like a warm hug. Flicking through the photographs on my coffee table, I take in the snapshots from my mother's life. The colors burst with vibrancy. There she is in one frame, grinning in front of a canvas splattered with bold strokes of color, the warmth of her joy radiating off the paper. In another, she stands beside a group of women, all beaming with pride after a community event. I can almost hear their laughter echoing in my mind. With each photo, my heart swells with an overwhelming sense of pride. My mother is finally laying down roots of her own, growing in ways I always hoped she would. But while she has taken her steps into the horizon of newfound independence, I too am forging my own way. Healing is not as simple as I once thought. It sprawls across many landscapes, sometimes rugged and steep. Just when I believed the echoes of my past were finally quieting, an unexpected message arrives, vibrating on my phone with a dissonance that makes my heart race. The screen lights up, revealing my father's name, a name I had kept at arm's length for far too long. With a mix of surprise and apprehension, I feel my palms sweat as I take a deep breath, then accept the video call. There he is, staring back at me through the screen. No longer is he the distorted figure from my memories, his face twisted in anger and berating expressions. Instead, he appears older and more fragile, with lines etched deep into his skin, signs of strain from the battles he has fought within himself. Tears glisten in his eyes, shimmering with a tenderness that almost catches me off guard. Amelia, he begins, his voice cracking slightly, I don't expect anything, but I want you to know I regret my actions and I am learning to change. The unexpectedness of his words washes over me like a wave crashing down. I want to scream, to cry, to hurl every ounce of pain I have carried for so long back at him. You regret? I finally manage, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Where was that regret when I was hurting? Where was that when my childhood fell apart? I know, he rushes to interject, the regret in his tone sharper than any blade. I can't change the past, but I am trying to be better. For a moment, time stretches and twists. I close my eyes, letting the emotions surge within me. There is anger, yes, but underneath lies a surprising flicker of something else, curiosity. What does he mean, learning to change? I had spent so long nurturing my own journey of vengeance that the thought of forgiveness feels foreign, almost like a foreign language I never bothered to learn. I open my eyes, locking onto his gaze, searching for the father I had lost. How do I know you mean it? How do I know this isn't just another show, some empty promise like the ones you made when we were still there? I feel the heat of my own words as they spill out, but I need to hold on to my ground. I wouldn't blame you for thinking that, he replies, his voice steady despite the quivering of his lip. I've had to live with the consequences of my actions, the hurt I caused you and your mother. It's a burden that weighs heavily on me, each day a reminder of who I've been. He takes a shaky breath, his eyes never leaving mine. I am attending meetings, speaking with a therapist, trying to understand that man in the past and trying to let him go. I want to change because I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself. I don't know. I take a shaky breath, feeling my throat tight. It's difficult to forgive. It takes time, and part of me wonders if you deserve that time. It's all jumbled inside my mind, conflicting thoughts battling against one another like stormy clouds. I understand, he murmurs, his voice softening. All I can ask for is an opportunity. I do not expect you to forget, but perhaps you could allow me into your life again slowly. If that's what you want, I just want to be here for you as a father should. Again, those piercing eyes rake over me, their intensity akin to a painful reminder of the past. Yet there is a flicker of recognition, something buried deep behind the memories of torment. I wonder for the first time if I could mold a bridge instead of a wall. It feels almost radical, this thought of reaching back toward him instead of pushing away. Why should I believe you? I let my words float in the air between us as the tension thickens. You shouldn't have to believe me right away, he admits, a hint of resignation falling over him like a shroud. Amelia, the past shadows me, but I want to change. I want to be the father you deserve, even if it is after all this time. I have to earn your trust back, and I get that. Silence drapes over us, heavy and thick, almost palpable with the gravity of the moment. My heart beats erratically, each thump an indication of my inner turmoil. I want to scream, to let everything out, to cut him with the jagged edges of my unresolved pain. But alongside that impulse is another voice, one that whispers softly, inviting me to consider the possibility of healing. I lean back slightly, pondering the risks. Could this be my chance to rewrite our story? Could I foster understanding instead of resentment? What if I begin feeling uncertain? What if we just started off small, maybe a phone call now and then, and we see where that leads us? Small is good. His response is immediate, relief washing over his features. Very good. He hesitates for a moment. I promise not to overwhelm you. I only want to support you if that is what you wish. I absorb his words, letting them swirl through me. I think of my mother, the strength she has gathered to reclaim her happiness, the dreams she has ignited in the spaces where once lived sadness. Perhaps I too could forge a pathway built not in sorrow but in gradual trust. All right, I say slowly, realization dawning over me like the morning sun. Let's try this. I can't promise anything will change overnight, but I'm willing to see where this leads. He nods, an expression of humility gracing his features as he whispers, "Thank you, Amelia." I disconnect from the call, my heart pounding in my chest, tinged with something so raw it sends shivers down my spine. Uncertainty, yes, but also the thrilling taste of possibility. Part of me is terrified, but another part feels liberated. The storm inside me settles, the chaos transforming into gentle waves of hope. Life truly leads us to the most unexpected places, teaching us lessons hidden in the shadows of our pain. With each passing moment, I realize that vengeance and healing can coexist, shaped by the choices we make. I no longer desire retribution, I long for something beautiful to emerge from the ruins. Now, standing at the brinks of a new beginning, I envision a future where each of us can grow, where dreams are nourished like fragile buds in spring. A family reborn, creating a path paved with healing, maturity, and ultimately, love. My fingers curl around the mug as I consider the seeds I've planted, and for the first time in a long while, I feel that perhaps, just perhaps, I can nurture a brighter tomorrow.